Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, organization Nextdoor celebrates National Random Acts of Kindness Day, encouraging people to practice neighbor care. A Nextdoor ambassador and lifestyle expert joins me to discuss how the holiday could strengthen relationships and connections within communities. What are some ways people in New York City can participate? Then the federal government plans to end pandemic-related SNAP benefits. Director of Government Relations for Food Bank for NYC joins me to discuss how this will affect millions of people facing food insecurity. What can low-income families do to cope with this loss of resources? After that, following an earthquake in Turkey and Syria, many relief organizations have come to the forefront. However, many people could be running into scams instead of reputable charities. President and CEO of Charity Navigator joins me to discuss ways to avoid these scams. What are some of the different forms of charity fraud? And finally, the FDA plans to simplify the COVID vaccination schedule, allowing most people to get vaccinated with one dose. Professor of Epidemiology at the CUNY School of Public Health joins me to discuss. Will this change encourage more Americans to get a yearly vaccine? So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, February 21st, and you are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet.TV. With a mission to prioritize kindness across the country, organization Nextdoor helps build connections with those nearby. Their most recent effort celebrates National Random Acts of Kindness Day and caring for your neighbors. We got a chance to speak with Nextdoor ambassador and lifestyle expert Meaghan B to discuss how we can practice neighbor care. Let's take a look. Hi, Meaghan. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss this topic.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to start off just talking a little bit about yourself. I know that you're an ambassador for Nextdoor. Can you just tell me, how that started? And can you talk a little bit about the organization and the work that they do?
Sure. So I am the author of a book called Your Fully Charged Life, and it is a radically simple approach to having endless energy and filling every day with yay. And in the Love Charged chapter of my book, I talk a lot about the importance of community and connecting with our neighbors and how that really contributes to our happiness. And so Nextdoor is mentioned in my book and has always really been an integral part of how I stay connected with my neighbors and feel connected to my community.
Now, February 17th was National Random Acts of Kindness Day. Can you just talk a little bit about the meaning behind that day?
Sure. So I love the fact that there is a Random Acts of Kindness Foundation, which was started in 1995. And then 2004 in New Zealand, Random Acts of Kindness Day started. The guy was sitting in traffic, witnessed some terrible road rage and thought to himself, we need a day dedicated to kindness, and Random Act of Kindness Day was born. It came to the States and we celebrate on February 17th. But frankly, every day should be Random Acts of Kindness Day. It's the one thing, kindness, it doesn't cost a penny and there's never enough of it.
Now, how did Nextdoor, the organization, kind of get involved with this? And can you just expand a little bit more about the organization in general?
Sure. So Nextdoor is the ultimate neighborhood network. You can download the Nextdoor app. So you go into your app store and you look for Nextdoor, the little green N. And what it does is it helps you connect with your community. So I have 3 kids. I'm very involved in the kids' school and the kids' sports and their activities. And I know those family members and I know those kids. But I might not necessarily know someone 5 families down if they had smaller kids, or I might not know the widow 2 blocks away. What Nextdoor does is it connects you with your entire zip code. It makes your community, bigger than your small circle and really becomes this hub. So it's a place that I go to connect with my neighbors, but to get restaurant recommendations, to find out, does anybody have a handyman? Uh-oh, somebody's missing a cat. It's really your neighborhood hub, and it allows you to connect with your community in a much bigger way than your personal circle.
And is this the app that you're talking about right now, the Nextdoor app?
Absolutely. So that's the Nextdoor app. I have it on my phone and I'm constantly scrolling, whether it's I need to donate a couch. Does anybody need a couch? Or I'm looking for someone to clean my gutters, or I want to find ways to give back. Is anyone doing any kind of a donation, a coat drive for the winter? Because I've got some coats that I'd love to donate. It really is my ultimate neighborhood network. I use the app nonstop. And through the Nextdoor community, we also practice something called neighbor care. So I'm sure you've heard of self-care, and that is this whole concept of we need to be good to ourselves. But at Nextdoor, we really believe we also need to be good to our neighbors. We did a survey and we found that being connected to as few as 6 people in your community, 6 neighbors, can help, ease anxiety and depression. It can help with loneliness. There's a loneliness epidemic in this country post-pandemic, and feeling a part of your community, connecting with your neighbors. I call it the love charge in my book. Being connected with your community is really a recipe for health and happiness.
Now, how can somebody practice neighbor care, on this day? But I mean, honestly, as you mentioned before, on any day, how can somebody, really prioritize practice neighbor care?
Well, the thing is that it doesn't have to be these grand, sweeping, massive gestures. It could be really, really simple. I mean, for me, it means I'm walking my dog and my phone is in my pocket. And instead, I'm making eye contact with people I pass by. I'm smiling. I'm saying hello, good morning. Maybe I'm giving a compliment. In my neighborhood, in my community, it means maybe I'm bringing someone's trash cans in. Maybe I'm taking their recycling out. My neighbor Larry tucked my packages under my awning in the rain the other day. That is an act of kindness. That is an act of neighbor care. It might mean you're making a batch of muffins. And you know what? I'm going to bring the extras across the street because you know what? Janice might need them, that she might love that sweet treat. What are these small ways that we could have a big impact in someone else's life?
Now, I really want to know, we're based in New York, especially in the Bronx. And, New York sometimes have a reputation of not always being the kindest, right? What are some ways people in highly populated cities or areas like New York City can participate in something like this?
Well, once again, it's these small things. It's really just recognizing someone's humanity, making eye contact, saying hello. A smile goes a long way. And I'll tell you, those smiles can be contagious. Think about the way your energy impacts someone else. If you walk into, a store and you're head down, shoulders hunched, like a grimace on your face, that is impacting someone else's energy. Something as simple as being open and receptive to kindness, to giving someone a compliment. I like your shirt. Have a nice day. Can really, really go a very long way.
Right. And I think it's so funny. I think in New York, sometimes we have like a best of both worlds here. So I'm really glad that you talked about it. It really is small things. It's not, it doesn't have to be these grand gestures. So I'm so glad that you pointed that out. Now, outside of the feeling of doing something kind, sometimes, it feels amazing. It makes the other person feel good. But what are some of the actual benefits of just building relationships with people in your community?
Well, I talk a lot about it in my book, and it's this power of weak ties. Not everybody has to be your mother-in-law, your best friend. You don't have to braid each other's hair or barbecue. It is simply recognizing people's humanity, realizing that we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. And that might mean, using the cashier's name tag at the grocery store and saying, "Hey, Ed, how you doing today? Have a nice day." Really just connecting on a very basic level with the people around you and inspiring a sense of community, that we're all in this together.
Now, I understand there's a hashtag Ask Your Neighbors. Can you talk a little bit more about the purpose of that hashtag?
Yes. So at Nextdoor, we have two. We have Ask Your Neighbors, which I love, but we also have a new hashtag that I'm super excited about, which is hashtag Kind Neighbor. So if you are doing good deeds, share and celebrate those good deeds on social media with the hashtag Kind Neighbor, because kindness is contagious. When I get that spark of an idea of like, oh, so-and-so did that, I might want to do that too. How can we emulate these good deeds and really amplify and celebrate the kindness in this world?
Now, I want to talk about different generations because I think it's so important. Normally, when we think about being nice to our neighbor, we think of adults, right? But I want to know, what are some ways that teenagers and kids can safely, extend random acts of kindness to maybe their peers, friends, and other family members?
So I have 3 kids. My kids are 12, 10, and 9. And something we do is called the Kindness Rocks Project. So we take stones and we paint them and we do inspiring messages. So maybe one says, you're stronger than you think you are. Maybe one says kindness counts. Maybe one's just a smiling butterfly. And we hide those rocks around our community for people to just find and have a moment of surprise and delight. It's a very small way to get younger people in on the action. I've had brownie troops paint a bunch of stones. I've had youth groups. I've had it done as a class project in the high school.
I really like that. And I definitely wanted to make a point to say safely, right? Because it's like your child doesn't even have to interact with anybody and they're still making their day and smile on someone's face. So I think that's truly amazing.
It really is.
Now, I want to talk a little bit. I know that there's something that you guys have community guidelines, just in regards to the app and just this overall movement. Can you talk a little bit about those community guidelines? What are some things that people can do just to make sure that they're not overstepping any boundaries, but, still practicing kindness?
I mean, it's just basic human consideration, right? I mean, you want to treat people online or on an app the same way you would treat them in real life. Right. So it's really making kindness and positivity the central message and not really engaging in some of that negative banter.
Now, where can people find some inspiration and ideas for Random Acts of Kindness Day? I know now, it's gone, but like we said, we wanted to keep going. So what are some things that people can do if maybe people in their community, their immediate community doesn't really know about the day or anything? What can they do to start?
Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. Could you offer to shovel someone's snow or mow their lawn? Could you donate, school supplies or diapers to someone in need? Could you organize a local cleanup event or even just share a recipe? Bringing in people's mail or deliveries is wildly helpful. I even love this idea of going into the library, the local town library, making bookmarks and sneaking them in some of the books to surprise and delight somebody when they check out their book.
That's amazing. And just by speaking to you, I can see your energy is so, positive and light. And I think it's really nice that, we have people who prioritize kindness. Where does that stem from you? And, and why was this something that you kind of wanted to dig deeper into?
Listen, it feels good to do good. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I can't believe that I'm being pat on the back for doing this kind deed, because I got to tell you, it feels really good to me. I mean, I think that's the bottom line, is that it feels good to do good. And the more good you do, the more good you want to do.
All right. Well, Meaghan, thank you so much for joining me. And, talking about kindness, I feel a little bit happier already. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
To learn more about Nextdoor, please go to their website at www.nextdoor.com or follow them on Instagram at Nextdoor. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Open right after this.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Throw my heart out there in the open. Trees make you feel smaller. Can't help but get lost again.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo.
Gracias. Thank you.
What's wrong, mijo?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back. Millions of New Yorkers will soon have to prepare for the end of the pandemic increase in food assistance benefits. This news comes as a shock to many New Yorkers who are currently struggling with food insecurity and inflation. Director of Government Relations at Food Bank For NYC, Buess, joins me to discuss how this change will affect those who need it most. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having Food Bank on.
Now, the federal government declared COVID-19 a public health emergency, issuing an increase in food stamps for those in need. Can you just talk a little bit more about that situation and that effort and what it meant for Americans who were struggling at the time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So throughout the pandemic, there have been a variety of supports for lower income people in New York City and across the country that have helped people keep food on the table. And one really important resource that families had was the maximum benefits for food stamps, or what we now call SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So during the pandemic, households who qualified based on income received the maximum amount of funding for that program for their household. But starting next month in March, families in New York and other states across the country are going to see a reduction in those benefits. And that means that more New Yorkers are going to be struggling with food insecurity.
Now, at the height of the pandemic, we saw several food distribution efforts and pantries here in New York City. I know we saw so many in the Bronx. Can you just talk about the issue of food insecurity and how that affected New Yorkers specifically during the pandemic?
Yeah, so Food Bank for New York City works with about 1,000 community-based organizations across the 5 boroughs. About 700 of those are food pantries and soup kitchens. But we also work with colleges, we work with public schools, we work with 40 community-based partners to do SNAP assistance outreach and help New Yorkers stay on SNAP, get on SNAP. So as one of the largest hunger relief organizations in the city, we're concerned about this reduction in SNAP benefits because we saw a spike in need since the start of the pandemic at our community-based organizations, about 80% more visits from before the pandemic than today. And that level of need has maintained throughout the pandemic, and it hasn't gone away. We've seen this, unfortunately, before during the Great Recession. It took New Yorkers who were lower income almost 10 years to recover from the economic impacts and the fallout of that recession. And for New Yorkers who are lower income, we need to maintain support to make sure that folks can keep food on the table.
Now you've been working, or, your organization has been working with, just food insecurity and people who, need these resources. Can you just talk about what it was like probably before the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that food insecurity existed in New York City well before the pandemic. About 1.5, 1.6 million New Yorkers are food insecure. And what that means is that they don't have the resources in their household budget to pay for the food at the grocery store comfortably. So families make compromises. Families rely on multiple sources of food, and food pantries and soup kitchens, or the Nutrition Assistance Network in New York City, is a really big part of that. So our food distribution increased to help meet that need during the pandemic. Unfortunately, not only are there going to be these reductions to SNAP benefits, but the overall supply of food at food pantries and soup kitchens is down. A lot of that additional support that we were receiving and distributing to the community was also time limited. So across the city, food pantries and soup kitchens are reporting increased high levels of need, and the overall supply is declining. And the reality is food banks and food pantries and soup kitchens do an important service, but it's incredibly dwarfed by the scale of food distribution that SNAP provides. Families can go to the grocery store and buy exactly what they need for their household. And food banks are going to continue to work as hard as we can to get the resources out to the community. But we also, like I said, we're concerned.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because prior to that, I genuinely just thought it was only affecting families. So I didn't even think about how this could be affecting organizations who help families, that are struggling with food insecurity. So I appreciate you for bringing that up. Now, can you just talk about how this will affect people who were already receiving food stamps prior to the pandemic relief efforts? Like, are they going to see any changes? Is it going to, disappear for them? Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
So families that qualify based on income and also their household expenses are going to continue to qualify for SNAP. That's not going to change. What is going to change for some households is that they may not receive the maximum amount of benefit that they were receiving during the pandemic. So a good example would be senior citizens. A lot of seniors in New York City and across the country are on fixed incomes. And that fixed income might mean that they can afford to pay for basic necessities, for rent, or maybe in some cases they even own a home, but that's their primary asset. And during the pandemic, those households may have been receiving $100 or $200 of benefits, depending on their household size, but they may drop down if they're based on their income to the minimum amount, which is less than $30 a month. So before the pandemic, what we actually saw is that some seniors did not even seek SNAP assistance because it was such a low amount. Now, we know that every dollar of grocery benefits is important. So we encourage every New Yorker to continue to seek SNAP assistance, to continue to recertify. Food Bank for New York City is there for you. And you can visit our website at foodbanknyc.org. And you can see some of the resources that we have in terms of connecting people to SNAP benefits, as well as other food assistance resources at food pantries and soup kitchens. So we should continue to ensure that New Yorkers can maximize those benefits because they're really, really important, and continue to ensure that the city has the resources that they need to help sign up New Yorkers for SNAP benefits. And of course, our local government has the opportunity to fortify food pantries and soup kitchens. This is city and state resources that go to help do the work that we do every day.
Now, this also comes at a time where so many New Yorkers are, and I think these are New Yorkers of all backgrounds, who are currently dealing with inflation. Can you just talk about, how that is, coupled with this kind of makes it like really a recipe for disaster, or, it makes it really challenging for so many people?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think everybody in the city across the country is experiencing higher costs of food at the grocery store. So, of course, what that means is that our dollars just don't go as far to buy the things that we need to be nutritionally fortified. Of course, we also know that whole foods and fresh foods, those can cost a little bit more. So when we talk to the folks that we help receive SNAP benefits, one of the things that they report is that during the pandemic, with this additional assistance, people were able to buy more fresh fruits and vegetables. But we're seeing an increase of about 10% year over year in the cost of food at groceries, the cost of groceries at in the city and across the country. So, that means those dollars are not going as far. Now, the president and his administration have taken an important step in increasing the way or affecting the way that those benefits are calculated to make it a little bit better for families. But Congress has a really important opportunity this year to negotiate a farm bill that really prioritizes the nutrition needs of people across the country. So we're going to keep talking to our congressional delegation and our senator, particularly Senator Gillibrand, has been incredibly powerful advocate for ensuring that people across the country have SNAP benefits. So we're going to continue to partner with them and advocate for a strong farm bill that prioritizes the needs of lower income people in the country.
And I'm really glad that you brought up nutrition. I think that's an important factor that sometimes often gets left out. It's access to healthy food, because I know here in the Bronx, we are considered number 62, which means that, we have the lowest health outcomes. Can you just talk about how, that access to nutritious food also, has a lot to do with food insecurity?
Yeah, so food insecurity really is about resources. But we think about sort of the choices that families make when they receive SNAP benefits. They can go to the grocery store and choose exactly what is best for them. So that can be food that is, culturally relevant if people are keeping kosher or halal, for instance, as a lot of New Yorkers are. Or that can be the fruits and vegetables folks like to eat or the proteins folks like to eat. So SNAP is really our most effective and efficient way for families to get the types of food that make the most sense for them. At food pantries and soup kitchens, we work really hard with a lot of our network to ensure that we have the produce and the protein available for New Yorkers, as well as other staples, of course, that folks need, like pastas and cereals and things like that. So we work really hard with our network to provide a well-balanced supply at the shelves of our food pantries across the city.
Now, what can low-income families do? Seniors, all the people that are going to be affected by this, what can they do to cope with this loss of resources?
Well, I think number one is that families should make sure that they're maximizing their benefits. So that means reviewing your household income and expenses and making sure that you've connected with someone who can help you keep your SNAP profile up to date. Food Bank for New York City has that service. We work with other organizations across the city that can help make sure that all of those expenses that you have, including healthcare expenses, all of that gets calculated into your budget to make sure that the benefits that you qualify for are accurately reflected. So that's number one. Number two, I would say to continue to do advocacy. You can visit our website. We have got an advocacy page and send a letter to your member of Congress to express the importance of this benefit for their household or for all households across the city. And I think, for families that are in immediate crisis, certainly visiting emergency food programs is important. We're going to continue to serve as we have throughout the pandemic. We're going to continue to try to maximize the food available at food pantries and soup kitchens. We have a food program locator on our website. Folks can check out. It's got the hours of food programs in every neighborhood across the city. So folks can call up, and if they're a new visitor, I encourage people to call the phone number that's to that program and ask them what their process is for visiting for the first time.
Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me.
It's been enjoyable to talk to you. Thank you so much for putting a light on this important issue.
To stay informed about the work Food Bank for NYC is doing, please go to their website at www.foodbanknyc.org or follow them on social media at foodbank4NYC. Stay tuned, we have more open right after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill? No. You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
COVID-19 has changed how we spend weekends with the girls. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to brunching instead of late-night munching. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it? Is it safe? Should I wait?
It's okay to have questions. Now get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Mom's doing time for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back. When tragedy strikes, most people find themselves doing anything they can to support those in need. After the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, many charitable organizations stepped forward, but if you're not careful, you may run into scams. President and CEO of Charity Navigator, Michael Thatcher, joins me to discuss ways to ensure your donations don't end up in the wrong hands. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm really glad to be here. I'm happy to help out.
Now, just when we're thinking overall, what makes people so vulnerable to scams in regards to charity?
I think the key issue with any kind of charitable giving is that giving starts from the heart. Something happens in the world, or something happens to you or your family, and you're grabbed by the heart at that moment. There's a cause that's really called you. You either get really angry about it, you get really upset about it, you want to do something about it. And when that happens, we're emotionally triggered, and that does make us vulnerable. So we really want people to, follow that emotional link and then use your head to actually not get scammed and make a real difference in the world.
Now, according to the FBI, these scams can happen at any time, but they are especially prevalent after high-profile disasters like what we saw in Turkey and Syria. Can you just tell me about the charitable responses you saw in regard to Turkey and Syria?
Sure. So at Charity Navigator, what we try and make it easier for folks by actually creating a curated list of highly rated organizations that have sort of feet on the street that are doing part of the relief. They let your donation be dedicated to the actual relief effort, and they are highly rated, which means in many cases they have experience in the disaster cleanup and addressing some of the issues that come up.
Now, what are some of the different forms of charity fraud?
There are a lot of different forms, and actually one of the trickiest ones is what I would call spoofing or look-alike charities. So someone will create an entity or even just a fake website. It's not a fake website, it's a real website, but using a name of an organization that sounds really familiar and isn't actually that organization. So it's just outright fraudulent lying. Another form of fraud would be to solicit money for a stated purpose, but then use it for something entirely different. Or that sometimes you have fraud in the sense of, I actually have a legitimate charity, but most of the money is going to individual fundraisers or other entities, and it's not actually going to the purpose in question.
Now, that last point that you touched on, I think is super important because you're mentioning that the charity could be, a legitimate, reputable charity, but they're using, I think this is why sometimes, I guess when people say percentages or, certain things and it kind of tricks people. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. And I think there's part of what I'm talking about is how much money goes to fundraising or to administrative costs or to the actual program or the intervention that the organization works on. These measures are kind of basic guidelines. They're not necessarily telling you that the organization's making an impact. But if 90% of your dollar is going to paying for fundraisers, that's a problem, right? That's too much money going to anything but the cause. But ultimately, when it gets to looking at the difference that a charity makes in the world, you want to know and you want to hear the impact that they're making. And that isn't necessarily a financial ratio.
I also think it's important to touch on that because I think a lot of people caught on to, major charity networks that were doing similar things to that. And it kind of discouraged a lot of people from donating or kind of, just helping out a lot of these charities because they felt like, okay, my money isn't actually going to the people in need. It's going to maybe buying T-shirts to spread awareness or, do different things. Can you just talk about what you would say to those people who maybe felt a little bit discouraged, from doing charities because of what you're talking about right now?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that Charity Navigator has tried to do with our ratings is we look at 4 key areas. And these areas really help you understand and ultimately build trust between you and the organization you seek to support. And we're looking for strong leadership, the ability to be adaptable. We're looking for what we call accountability in finance. Are you transparent with your finances? Do you tell me how you spend your money? And do you actually have enough money to be around in case we hit some rainy days? We look at culture and community. So how do you engage with the community that you're supporting? How do you actually work with your own employees from more of a DEI perspective? And then finally, and most importantly, what are the impact and results that you're creating as an organization? So that framework is really whether we have the ratings or whether you internalize that and use that as a set of questions to ask an organization that you're seeking to support. It helps establish trust and lets you know that they are actually making a difference in the world in a way that you care.
Now, a lot of organizations, especially, charities, they operate online. This is a very easy place to get scammed. A lot of scamming these days happen online. What can donors do to just make sure that they're not falling for online scams?
So similar to any kind of, the phishing emails and you're getting solicitations where you see the actual address may say the name of an entity, but then you look afterwards and it's all kinds of numbers and garbled. It's not the actual address. It's a spoofed address. Be careful of that. I think the other thing to really always rely on independent sources. So just doing a simple Google search on an organization should you bring you to their actual site, not the spoof site. And then finally, Charity Navigator exists as a free service to enable you to do that sort of layer of protection. And one thing about our giving basket, if you choose to give to a charity through our platform, we won't let you give to a fake charity. And we're also, again, we're doing this for free. We don't charge for this. We're really trying to ultimately help giving be trustworthy.
Can you expand on the giving basket? I think it sounds really interesting. Can you just tell everybody, what that is and, what happens when they actually decide to partake in that?
Absolutely. So just real brief, Charity Navigator rates about 200,000 organizations annually. We also have information on all the legitimate, let's say legally registered charities in the United States. These are what we call 501c3 organizations. And on our website that has this information, there's also ability to just think of like any kind of an e-commerce situation where you pick a charity that you want, you put it in your giving basket, you then go through a checkout process, and we'll process your credit card information, and then the money gets distributed directly to that organization. So the giving basket just facilitates that transaction in up to 100. I don't think we see too many people giving to 100 organizations, though.
That's amazing. I like that because it makes people feel a little bit more secure, when they're doing that process. So that's amazing. Speaking of, just donating, I know that I mean, I want to ask, can a requested form of payment alert donors to whether or not they're being scammed? So if somebody's asking, for gift cards or, oh, can you donate through Cash App? Is that a way that they could be getting scammed?
I think where I would be leery, you ought to be able to dictate how you're going to give. In other words, it's your money, right? And if someone says, well, can you go out and buy these gift cards for me? Or do you mind give me your banking? That's a huge red flag. Anybody asks you for any kind of personal information around your banking, I would turn around and walk the other way rather quickly. So you should control how the transaction happens. Particularly any legitimate nonprofit's going to have a multitude of ways that you can give to them. And generally, working through your credit card, writing a check. Venmo is also increasingly something that charities are receiving payments from. But don't ever be pushed into giving in any specific format. That to me is already a red flag that someone is being coercive in their approach, and that's not okay.
Now, I want to talk about, obviously donating online is a huge way, to support people. But, people also support, by giving food, actual food, or giving their time. Can you just talk about donating and just supporting those in need by physical, actual work?
So there are a couple of things. For example, in the situation of Turkey right now and Syria with the earthquake recovery efforts, unless you're actually an experienced recovery, I'm not sure what the right word is, but unless you have experience in disaster recovery, being a volunteer right now might be difficult. And actually, a lot of the organizations right now, they need resources to pay professionals to come in and do that sort of first line support. There is a need for volunteering, and there are a couple of different ways that you can find volunteer efforts. What's interesting, since the global pandemic, there's a lot more that you can do online. We've got on Charity Navigator, we have a connection through Golden Volunteer, which helps you localize the volunteering opportunities based on your zip code, and then find an organization that helps you there. The last point I'll make is donating goods. Be careful donating goods in the sense that because you have something extra doesn't mean it's necessarily needed by an organization. Make sure they need what you're giving, and then try and find a connection that way, because the donating of goods can often be not necessarily useful, particularly with regard to a disaster recovery effort.
Now, what should people do if they realize that they have become a victim of a specific charity scam?
I think there are a couple different avenues for that one can go. Is go to your state consumer protection office. You can also go to, and that would be also the Attorney General of your state. And then also there's, I think it's tips.fbi.gov will also get you directly to the FBI, where you can file a complaint and say you've been scammed.
Now, what would you do to encourage people? I know sometimes when it comes to alerting, especially if you're talking FBI or, people in high places, people can sometimes feel a little bit nervous or scared to come forward. What would you say to somebody who's feeling, a little bit apprehensive about that?
I think when it's hard when we've been taken advantage of, and there's hurt, there's embarrassment, there's anger. But ultimately, the FBI is there to help you, maybe recover what you've lost. But also, it's really important to call these things out, because it stops the perpetrator from stealing from someone else. And so you're actually doing good to the world and for the world by reporting on when you've been taken advantage of in a charity scam. There's so much good that goes into the nonprofit sector, and there really is a small number of bad players in there. We need to take action to reduce that number even more and make it go away.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining me, and having this discussion.
Thank you, and thanks again.
To learn more about how to avoid charity scams, please go to Charity Navigator's website at www.charitynavigator.org or follow them on social media at CharityNav. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Open right after this.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
I know what you're thinking. I need a job.
Well, I've been there.
I've been there.
But you gotta keep going.
You just need the right skills. Find an apprenticeship.
I found a course online.
You can do this.
You will find something.
You will find something new.
Welcome back. Nearly 2 years after its initial release, health professionals are considering making the COVID-19 vaccine a yearly shot. In addition to adjusting the vaccination schedule to work as a yearly shot, the FDA is working towards allowing people to receive the shot in one dose. Joining me to discuss what this may look like is Professor of Epidemiology at the CUNY School of Public Health, Dr.Denis Nash. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to talk a little bit just about the initial vaccine and the booster. For those who don't know, which I'm one of them, can you just explain the difference between the initial vaccine and the booster?
Well, for many vaccines, not just COVID, there's a process of getting multiple shots. The first one is the shot that helps your immune system recognize the pathogen for the first time, maybe, and that creates an immune response and antibodies that are then primed. Your immune system is then primed. So if you are exposed to the virus or the pathogen, it will mobilize quickly to prevent, bad things from happening, including anything from infection to severe disease and death in the case of COVID. Sometimes a single vaccine is not enough, and not enough to create a lasting immune response. And so booster shots are needed. And so sometimes there may be, one or two booster shots after the initial primary series of vaccination, so that people's immune systems will recognize the pathogen for many years to come. And so that is what we have in the case of the COVID vaccine. The booster shots now, there's something slightly different with COVID, which is that they've also adapted these booster shots to recognize the most recent versions of variants of COVID that are circulating now. And, the older vaccines did not. And so now what we have is a combination of the initial primary series plus booster shots that are recognizing the latest version of COVID that's circulating out here in the hopes of, providing an immune response that is as most protective as possible.
Now, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that because, as I said previously, that a lot of people received their vaccine nearly 2 years ago now. And some people probably haven't gone back since, or they never got a booster. Can you just talk a little bit? You said that, it's constantly being updated. So, what's going to happen for those people who, probably just got that initial vaccine? They were vaccinated, but they probably haven't gone back since.
Yeah, we have people in all kinds of different scenarios. There are people who were vaccinated a long time ago with the primary series and have never gotten a booster. Among those, you'll have people who were infected with COVID before they were initially vaccinated, or infected with COVID after they were initially vaccinated. All of these people are in different situations in terms of where their immune system is and its ability to recognize the virus. But in general, because we don't really know the extent to which COVID infection mobilizes the immune system the way a vaccine does, and for the lasting immunity that provides, it's important for those that had only a primary series of vaccine 2 years ago to get the most up-to-date shot. And that has the advantage of including the strain of the virus that has been circulating lately closest to Omicron.
Now, the FDA is proposing skipping over the initial vaccine shot, meaning patients will only have to take the booster. Why may this be appealing to the FDA?
I'm not sure why it would be appealing to the FDA. Of course, well, it's always helpful to be able to simplify the way we deliver vaccines to millions and millions of people every year. And so there's that appeal. But the FDA's primary job is to ensure both efficacy, that the vaccine is effective at what it's intended to do, and safety. And so it can't move to a schedule that is annual unless there's evidence behind it that suggests that it's safe and effective to do that. And so this is, I think, early days in what we'll see happening with the COVID vaccine. Right now, it's still recommended for people to get the primary series of vaccine followed by booster doses. Maybe one day when COVID becomes a little bit more predictable and more seasonal, the way that influenza has become in this country, we'll begin to see moving towards an annual shot. But right now, most experts do not feel it's time to move in that direction.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I'm one of the people that, I got my vaccine quite some time ago. So it's hard to think about what that process is like now, but you mentioned that it's still the same kind of like multiple steps. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Right. So if you've never been vaccinated, you would start with the primary series of vaccines, which are the same ones that people got 2 years ago. They include what's called the wild type virus, the original COVID strain that was circulating back in 2020 and 2019. And then sometime after that, you are expected to get the booster shots. But if you've gotten your vaccine 2 years ago, the primary series, what you would get now is the booster dose that includes the bivalent vaccine, and it combines the original wild type strain plus the Omicron strain. So it has both in there, and it's meant to improve protection against the current variants that are circulating now.
Now, in regards to just simplifying this overall process, which I know a lot of people eventually would like to, go towards, is this something that could, be beneficial to everyone, or will some people still need to kind of go through that series of different shots?
Well, that's a great question. And there are people whose immune systems aren't as responsive to vaccines and boosters. And these include elderly people or people who are immunocompromised. And I believe also, young children may need a kind of a series of vaccinations, kind of like we see them have for measles, mumps, and rubella, where they receive the initial series and then they get booster doses as they age. So there are going to be some differences and different recommendations for different people, mainly aimed to help ensure that they're as protected as possible.
Now, vaccines were very controversial, and I think they still are very controversial. And I think a lot of people were hoping or assuming that, once they got that, initial series of the vaccine, that they wouldn't have to think about it again. Do you think it would be challenging to get people to kind of continue to get a yearly shot in regards to the COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, let me just first say that vaccines are not at all controversial among healthcare providers and experts who have been, involved in studying these vaccines, developing them, and testing them. They're very clearly shown to be highly beneficial and protective against the bad outcomes that we're all trying to avoid. And there is there's no question among us whether or not it makes sense for people to be up to date on their COVID-19 vaccines. So there's no controversy there in the community of healthcare providers and scientists and experts and epidemiologists like me. Mm-hmm. So then, is there still some hesitancy and concern in the community of people who may need to receive vaccines? Yes, and there are lots of reasons behind this, and a big one has been related to people's understanding of what the vaccines are actually supposed to do. And there was messaging and an expectation, frankly, among scientists like myself that vaccines, early COVID vaccines, would protect people against infection, as well as, and if they could prevent infection, of course, they would prevent people from dying or being hospitalized from COVID. But we quickly learned with variants that the virus could evade vaccines. It could still infect people, but the vaccine still worked against protecting severe disease and death, and they still do so today. And so, but I think that resulted in a lot of confusion. Like, if I can still become infected with COVID after I'm vaccinated, why should I even bother getting vaccinated? Well, the reason is that you can still be protected against severe disease and death, and many other things that are like often not talked about with COVID, like such as long haul COVID. It's increasingly being shown that vaccinations protect against this outcome as well. The other big reason why people are, I think, often question whether or not they should move forward and get additional vaccinations or get vaccinated for the first time relates to the unfortunate amount of misinformation and disinformation that is circulating on all levels of the media and social media and the internet, that I think makes people question whether or not there's a reason that they should avoid getting vaccination. And this is, it's very unfortunate. It's the result of a very deliberate effort to mislead people. The anti-vaccine community has been doing this for other vaccines for many years, and they've really stepped it up for COVID. And it's unfortunate because it leaves people, unsure about what to do, or worse, completely misinformed about the benefits of vaccines.
Now, I want to add, I think you said it really well, and, vaccines are important. So I'm glad that, you kind of spoke on that. But let's say there are some people who are, maybe nervous about it, or, it takes a little bit more encouraging. What could they do now to, just prevent themselves from getting sick from COVID? Would you still recommend, masks and other COVID preventions? Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
100%. If you're not vaccinated, or you're not up to date on your vaccines, and you're not ready to do so for whatever reason, there are lots of other things that you can do to protect yourself from COVID-19. To be sure, it's getting harder and harder, because when some of these surges happen, they affect so many people, and even the most vulnerable people, even the most people who are trying the hardest to avoid COVID, end up getting it during some of these surges. But masks still have always been very effective at preventing COVID infection. Also avoiding large crowds and gatherings, especially where most of the people are unmasked. These are things that can help you, continue to avoid COVID. And even people who are vaccinated can use some of these strategies as well. It's important.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this. I think we definitely needed this update, for a lot of people who weren't staying up to date with COVID. So I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
To stay in touch with the CUNY School of Public Health, go to their website at www.cunyISPH.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us, and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.